My name is Schana Rosales, and I'm from Gladewater, Texas, and this is my testimony. 2 years ago, I'd reached a place in my life where I had no hope, and I started dealing with anxiety. I'm gonna cry. With anxiety and depression. My depression started getting so bad that I didn't want to live anymore. I was going to church, but just playing, not really having any kind of actual relationship with God. And the depression just started setting in worse and worse, and I got to a point where I didn't want to live anymore. So the first time that I tried to take my life, I put up one bullet in a gun and went and sat in my car. Then I decided that I didn't want to live anymore. And something just pulled me out of the car. I started thinking about the fact that, did I really want to die? I had 2 beautiful, healthy children, a good job, a good family, had all these things to live for, but I still felt so hopeless. And I just was so empty. And I got out of my car and I walked away that time, and God spared my life. And about a month later, I started struggling again, even worse this time. And we started going out to like bars and clubs, and I'd never done any of that before. And I found myself enjoying it, and I thought I was being fulfilled in doing that, but I was still so empty and broken. And one night we got home from the club, and I went into my kid's bathroom with the gun again, and I decided that I was going to take my life. And my husband broke the door down pretty much, and he made me go get help. So he took me to the hospital, and I went in and they stripped me down, even my ponytail and my hair. And it was humiliating. And the doctor came in and he talked to me, and he said that he recognized that I needed help, but he didn't feel like I belonged there. And he made a deal with me that they would let me leave, but I had to go see this nurse practitioner that was specialized in mental health that night. And they were open till like 10 o'clock at night. So we went, and that's where I met Keith Kerbo. And we went in, and I told him what was going on with me. And I'll never forget the words that he spoke to me was that I could do a lot of things to fix myself, but until I turned to God, that nothing would change for me. But I didn't want to hear it at the time at all. I didn't want to hear that truth, even though I knew it was truth in my life. And so I started getting help with the depression and the anxiety. And I started coming to Connect Church for the first time. And I fell in love with people here, and I fell in love with just feeling like I belonged to something, but I still had no relationship with Christ. I didn't know my identity. Wasn't walking in any type of freedom. I was trying, but still wasn't succeeding. I ended up starting to sing on stage, and I thought that I was fulfilling myself. And eventually, when the new wore off, I found myself looking for reasons not to come anymore. And any excuse I could find, I would. My daughter was coughing. I wouldn't come to church anymore. And I eventually quit coming altogether. I started saying out loud that I didn't even know if I believed in God anymore. Because how could a God love me, somebody like me, you know? And people started texting me from church just to tell me they loved me and that they missed me. And one day, Pastor Stephen texted me, and he said I wasn't ever too far in a place that God didn't love me and wouldn't forgive me, but that I had to be willing. And I texted him back and I said, but I don't understand how God could ever love me again. And he just started speaking truth in my life. And the very same people that I took this class with, the Walking in Freedom class, were the same people who started planting seeds in my life. And my family started just speaking truth to me. And eventually those seeds started to grow. And but I found myself still struggling. And I felt so empty and so broken, and so I started drinking. And I started drinking so much that I would pass out at night because I didn't want to be awake. And I knew that I was at a place where I had to make a decision in my life for my kids, that I was called to be better than what I was being, and I knew what I needed to do. So my family kept telling me, just come to church with us. And at this point, I had quit praise and worship, walked away from it. I was embarrassed, I was humiliated, because I was supposed to have my life together. I was on stage, right? I was supposed to have my life together. And here I was, a borderline alcoholic. And so I eventually ended up back at church. And I could hardly sit still in this service because I felt so much conviction in my life. And I knew what I needed to do. So I made my way down to the altar at the altar call. And I asked God to forgive me. And I asked him to let me come back home. And there's never been a time that God hasn't met me where I asked him to. And I met a lady at the altar that night. I didn't even know her name. I didn't even know she went to church here. And she started praying for me. And she sat on the altar beside me, started talking to me. She gave me her phone number. I didn't even know her name still. I had to ask her so I could save her number in my phone. And God started transforming my life at that very moment. And she told me, you got to come to my Walking in Freedom class. And I was like, she's texting me, I have to now. Like, this lady's invested in me. I've got to go. So I came. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't want to come. I mean, I was doing really good. And the first night we walked in and we had to fill a form out about the things you struggle with, I pretty much circled every single thing. I mean, you could have just made one big circle for me, honestly. It was like depression, suicide, anxiety, fear, unforgiveness, the feeling wanted, all of these things I circled that I was struggling with. But then we started digging a little bit deeper, week by week. And every week, I can assure you that it was a struggle to get to class. Something would happen that day. There was even one time where I was like, I'm not going. And my mom took the class with me. And she came over to get me because we ride together. And I said, I'm not going. And she left. And then I was like, you know what? She told me just to hang in there and keep coming. So I went by my mom's house because I thought maybe she didn't go, and she didn't either. So I picked her up and we came. And week by week, every time God revealed a little bit more of my identity to myself. And that's something I've never had. And I never could fight battles because I didn't know what God said about me. And so when I began to learn these truths about God, who God says I am, I was able to fight these feelings that I had and able to fight things that people had, said about me or put on me or whatever with truth. And so in one of the weeks of class, God blessed me with a new oven. And I was so excited to come tell everybody in class because I hadn't had an oven in 2 years. And so I came to class and I was telling everybody about I got a new oven and I was going to give God praise and glory for it or whatever. And a couple weeks later, I came back and I said, I got a new job. And I was like, they were like, oh my goodness, congratulations. Yes, it's more money and it's better circumstances and all these things. And God checked me and he was like, have you prayed about this? Are you really going to be who you say you're being at this point? Are you going to really follow me? And I gave my notice. I signed an offer letter and I met with my boss and I said, I'm going to need the weekend to pray about this. And I prayed about it and I could not get peace about leaving. So I called her up and I said, I'm staying. Well, I came to class the next week and I was so embarrassed because I was like, here I am. I've just told everybody that I've taken this new job and I'm so excited. And then God was like, I don't shame you, because Pastor Stephen told me that one time that's God is not a God of shame. That is the enemy. And I knew right then that it was a test, and I had passed. And honestly, it's probably the first test I might have ever actually passed with God. And so I decided to tell everybody. And I told everybody that, 6 weeks ago, I would have never heard God's voice, much less followed it. And I was so proud to sit there and say that, you know what, I made a decision on my own, but God checked me and I heard him and I said, I'm circling back to you, God. And I turned the job down. I'm where I'm at. I'm at my job. The next week we came back to class again, and she handed us our papers back from the first night, and with another paper where we had wrote what we had given to God. And I given, my kids, my marriage, my job, everything to God. And she handed us our first night papers back. And when she handed it to me, I honest to God thought she gave me somebody else's paper, even though it had my name on the top of it, because I didn't recognize the person who filled it out the first time. And in that moment, I realized that God had transformed my life and that I was free for the first time ever. And I began to do the challenge of 15 plus 2 or 17. And I don't even think when I could pray for 5 minutes. And I would look up, and I used to would watch the timer, I would watch the timer like, okay, it's been 5 minutes. I can put the Bible down. I can stop listening to music. And next thing you know, I prayed for 30 minutes. I'm reading 2 devotionals, and I just found myself so hungry for God. I just wanted more. And I've never worshiped like I do. I have never wanted to be in church more than I do right now in my life. I don't think that it was by accident that I met Miss Stella at the altar that day, and that I never met her before. And I don't think it was an accident that she invested in me before this class ever started, because I probably wouldn't have come. My life has changed. God's my priority. He's my number one. And I'm proud to look at my husband and tell him, I love you, but I love God more. And I love my kids, but I love God more. I've never felt so fulfilled as I'm flawed, but forgiven, and now free. That's my story. Woo!